I want to go over something that's really important that's overlooked by both buyers and sellers right now in this market. When we go over the market update numbers, we talk about average sales price, list to sales price ratio, and all those things like that. But there is something really important that almost never gets talked about that affects buyers and sellers' bottom lines. It's a type of discount that's not reflected in average sales price or list to sales price ratio because it's calculated a little bit differently. But again, it's super important. I'm talking about seller concessions or seller credits. I just looked, and right now over 50% of the transactions in the last month have some type of seller concession or some type of seller credit. This is big. These are numbers that we haven't seen in months or years past, with this percentage of transactions given some type of credit back to the buyers. And even more interesting, about 40% of these have credits of over $4,000 or more. Sometimes they're $8,000, $9,000, sometimes even more than that. So real money going back to buyers that you're not going to see if you're just looking at price or list to sales price ratio. This can be negotiated through repair credits or, seller paid closing costs or buying down your interest rate, different things like that. A way to negotiate off, money off the contract price. But this is really important because this is dollar for dollar money that's going back or staying in the buyer's pockets. So if you see a $450,000 sales price, you don't see the seller credits that were involved in there, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in credits that were given back to the buyer or whatever the case may be. But those are real numbers and it's real money that's helping buyers out right now. And I promise if you watch this entire video, you're going to have a better understanding of the current real estate market in Winston-Salem, Greensboro, High Point, and the surrounding area than about 90% of the agents out there. And I don't say that, to be mean or make enemies with other agents, but it just simply is the facts. Reason why most real estate agents, when you ask how's the market, they answer it one or two ways. The first way is they say, oh, it's great, because they think that's what they're always supposed to say. It's always a great time to buy, a great time to sell. I'd love to do some business. Or the other way is, depending on what their personal production is. It's slow, it's busy, it's this or it's that. When really, I would think if you are trusting someone with probably the biggest financial transaction of your life, you would want them really in tune with what was going on the market on a really deep level. Anyway, I digress. Let's get into the numbers. But if you watch this, you're going to be really in tune with what's going on in the market right now. Jeff Valentino, if you need help buying or selling, my contact information is on screen and in the description. First, we'll talk about the overall numbers. Not a ton to report here, but average sales price, yes, it's still high. We're still near 10-year highs, but it did come down a little bit due just primarily to seasonality. And the total number of closed sales and those big overall numbers, they didn't do anything super surprising. It's kind of going along on how we think it would be in still, a strong market, but it is really has been more favorable to buyers in the last 30 or 45 days here during deal season. No big news there besides what I mentioned at the really beginning as far as seller credits going. That's a big deal that's happening right now in the market. But if we move on to like a more real-time snapshot, we'll take a look at this 7-day market snapshot. We're going to see 105 listings came on the market and 85 went under contract. This is important because this is a more real-time number. When we have these numbers and we look back on the month before, we're looking at the past a little bit. This is a little bit more real-time. So we see about 80-85% of homes that are coming on the market are going under contract within 7 days. So we're still in deal season right now for buyers, but that tide really is starting to turn. I just had a client interested in a really nice house in Ardmore. It was on the market one day, had 2 offers, 1 under contract. We didn't even get a chance to see it. So the tide is changing, but still being in February, it's still a good time of year, season-wise for buyers to buy. But now let's take a look at the supply and demand numbers and really go just one level deeper into what's going on to the market right now. First thing I want to talk about is something important here is total number of new listings. We had almost 2,000 new listings last month, which is really good for this time of year. It's similar to what it was last year at this time. But what I want you to notice on this chart, you see that 1,500 listings line. We haven't crossed that 1,500 listings and towards the end of a year, which is typically the slowest time of year for new listings, which is sort of obvious. But really look at the last few years during the pandemic. You're going to see we had much more activity. So these last couple of years, we're not getting anywhere close to the number of new listings that we have in the past. So we're several hundred new listings short for this time of year of what we were during the pandemic. That's why bouncing back to almost 2,000 new listings this last month was such a good sign for inventory moving forward. But there is one other important thing I want you to take notice of on here. It's not reflected on this chart, but I looked it up. Our new construction listings are making over 20% of these new listings that came in the market. So if new construction is not your thing, that's not really great news because that just compresses the number of existing homes are still much smaller than even this chart shows because new construction listings are right near a 10-year high. Next, on the supply side, let's look at the total supply of homes. And good news, again, this is going to be good news for buyers. We're near a 5-year high for total inventory on the market, which is great news. But you can see we're still overall in a low inventory situation, but with about 4,500 total homes on the market. So a good chunk, 4,500 units of supply on the market right now, still much better than we have been in years past. That is good news moving forward for buyers. So let's take a look now at some of the demand numbers. And a huge indicator of demand is how many showings are your house getting? How many people look at it online or get it sent to them, look through the pictures, schedule a showing, go out and take a look at the house? Big indicator of overall demand. And last month, you're going to see we were only at 4.8 showings per listing. This is a low number. Of course, yes, seasonality, rates, prices, I get all that stuff like that. But to have under 5 showings on average per listing is pretty surprising. How is this important if you're a buyer or seller? Well, if we're talking on the phone and we're looking at listings, I'm looking on here and I say, hey, this has 6 or 7 showings scheduled for this first weekend. We know that is higher than typical demand for this house. So we might have to calibrate our strategy a little bit. If it's one that you want to go see, it might get offers, might go quicker than others, things like that. On the other side, if you're a seller and you've only had 1 or 2 showings in a week or 10 days on the market, you might want to wonder, how is my house exactly being marketed? What's being done to get it in front of more people? Next, let's take a look at median days on market. We had a huge jump in this number. This went up to 32 days is the median days on market. And I figured, like I said, seasonality, it typically slows down. This time of year, I did not expect it taking such a big jump. If you remember, for the longest time, I mean, we were at, during the crazy days, it was under 5 days, but for a long time, we were right at or under 2 weeks for months and months and months at a time. For it to go up this much just shows how much demand was taken out of the market. And I do expect this to come back down pretty sharply next month. Again, referring to that 7-day market snapshot, we had 105 houses come on the market, 85 go under contract. You can see in real time in the last week or so that demand number is changing. So I expect that to come down pretty sharply this month. But right now, we're still in deal season for buyers. There are more homes on the market. They're sitting longer, which means for buyers, a better chance to get either a bigger discount or more seller concessions. And then we have percent of list price. This made a breakout over the patterns that we've seen over the last couple of years. Actually, again, it dropped down. Not a huge drop, but at 98.7%, we have not seen it make that kind of double drop like that in years. So this 98.7% figure, again, not a huge discount for buyers, but there is discounts that are being taken in the market right now. And I don't think this is going to shoot right back up next month, but look for that to generally start to increase as we head into the spring market. And remember, this does not take into any consideration any seller concessions that were, negotiated in there as well. So if we're figuring, you get 2 or 3% off the purchase price and another 1 or 2% maybe in concessions, could make a really good deal if you're looking to buy right now. And whether you're looking to buy or sell, I'd love to be a resource for you. You can reach out to me directly at jeff@govalentino.com. Thanks.